Right, well, this is my first shot at this, so clearly I will make some mistakes, but frankly, I hope you will be forgiving, just as I have been forgiving of others. So I'm going to bash straight on because I've only got 10 minutes. Now, what's my location? Well, my location is Furness, and Furness is a peninsula at the bottom end of a county called Cumbria in England of the United Kingdom. A peninsula, as you know, is a strip of land that sticks out into a body of water. And the body of water that we stick out into is the Irish Sea. I mean, you can look up these details on Google. This isn't a geography lesson. So there you go. If you're interested, you'll look it up, and if you're not, you won't. So what about me? Well, I'm just an ordinary person like yourself, trying to make out what I can of the world that we live in and trying to come to some conclusions. And I have. Oh yes, I have. With help. I've had help in that. Some very good help. And not just contemporary help. Not just help from yesterday or last year. Or help from over 100 years ago. To help me understand why we live the way we do live. It's not religion, I can assure you. I am not religious at all. No. But I am political. And I will be talking about political things. I'll be talking about social things. Things that I think are of concern to everybody, or ought to be of concern to everybody. Now, there are some people who don't like that. They don't want to be involved in a conversation about why the economy is the way it is and what we should be doing about it, and that we are not responsible for this financial crisis. We're not responsible for that. The bankers and the financiers were responsible for that, but we are the ones that are having to suffer to pay it all back to them. And what are they doing? They're laughing over their glasses of brandy at this stupid, thick working class and middle class, paying them these tremendous amounts of money, unimaginable amounts of money, from the taxes that they've paid in. And from that, they're able to write off their debts and give themselves mega bonuses. Imagine that. And yet, if one of ours, an ordinary person like us, falls on hard times, has to have unemployment benefit, meagre though it is, right? And the odd opportunity comes along for a little bit of casual work, which will mean just a little bit of extra, just a few more pounds in their pocket, then the temptation can be too much and they'll succumb. I can understand that, and I hope some of you will as well. Deprivation is a terrible thing, and especially if you're seeing that your children are suffering as a result of that. But what happens to you when you're caught out? Oh, the forces of the state come in, and the Tory right-wing press will crucify you. And the magistrates will crucify you. They'll criminalise you. And perhaps, sadly, even neighbours will condemn you for it. Because they have no compassion, and no understanding. I'm not saying that fiddling unemployment benefit is correct. It isn't. But neither is fiddling your taxes either. And we're not talking about a few £100 here, we're talking about millions of pounds every year. So why aren't your next door neighbours, who are so keen to criticise you for the few £100 that you've cheated, screaming loud and clear against these mega book robbing bastards who don't pay their taxes? Huh? Ask them that. And if they think that you've got an easy life on the dole, tell them, well, why, if it's that easy, why do you carry on working? Give up your job, go on the dole and have a life of Riley. Why don't you do it? If it's that great, do it! Haha, you bloody won't, will you? No, because you know it's the pits. You know it's the dead end, don't you? But you're just like sounding off. You miserable bloody specimens. Have a bit of sympathy for those that fall on hard times. Okay, enough of this. Some people make me sick. Alright? I was talking to a guy in a pub many years ago now, 'cause I don't go to the pub much these days, can't afford it. But when I worked in the Midlands, I went into a pub one afternoon. I think I'd been out campaigning, as I do frequently, whenever I get the chance. And at the end of it, I just thought I'd call in at this pub and have a quick pint and then catch the bus and go home. And I called in at the pub. Sat down with my pint and I sat next to a guy that I'd never seen before in my life. And we struck up a conversation, as you could in those days, without them thinking, oh, are you a funny bugger, or are you going to try and mug me on the way out, or are you after my phone, or are you after my debit card or credit card or whatever? No, in those days you could have a conversation with a total stranger. And I started chatting to him. We started chatting about this, a bit of football, a bit of cricket, the weather. That's always comes up, doesn't it? And just then a guy happened to go by that I recognised. I didn't know him personally, and he wasn't even an acquaintance, but I'd met him before. I didn't have much regard for him, but anyway, he stopped. He looked at me and he looked at this chap and he said to the chap, oh, you don't want to be listening to him, he'll give you a headache. And then he was marching off wherever he was going, maybe the toilet, or maybe he was finished and going home. So I looked at this chap and I said, am I giving you a headache? I said, no. I said, well, I gave that chap a headache because, you see, the thing is, the brain is like a muscle. And if you don't exercise it, it becomes flabby. So the first time you try to make it give it any effort, or ask it to make some effort, it cramps up like a muscle, right? It gives you cramp. It's like gives you the headache. And it's like somebody going in for the London Marathon. If they didn't train beforehand, right, and they just turned up and started, within a mile or two, they'd be collapsed with cramp. Because they hadn't used those muscles for years. And it's the same with that pathetic person there. He hasn't used his brain for years. So as soon as I try to get him to think, his brain cramps up and he gets a headache. So I'm glad that I don't give you a headache, because it means that you regularly use your brain. That's good, that. I will return. Goodbye.